We believe the purpose of owning a business is funding your perfect life. Welcome to the next generation of growth and opportunity in the inspection industry. This is the Empire State of Mind. Empire State of Mind. Helping build companies with faster growth, higher profits, and more time freedom. Finally, a podcast for the home inspection industry and beyond. This is the Empire State of Mind. And this is your host, Matt Williams.
Welcome to the show. Today is a fantastic episode. We've been planning on this and trying to do this now for maybe a couple of months of getting all the pieces lined up. But this is a episode that isn't going to necessarily be about home inspection industry. It's actually going to be about planning your financial future, which I don't care where you're at, whether you're self-employed, whether you have a whole company or you're working for somebody. This is a conversation that I think needs to be happening around us all the time. And so this is a conversation that isn't happening around us and needs to be happening around us. And so today on the show, I have three guests with me. I have Robert Ward, Drew Williams, and Wally Conway. Hey, Wally, will you kick us off today? You had this call on Zoom with the IEB community, and can you kind of help recap kind of what you were covering in that call?
Yes, we have evolved a program in IEB called IEB on Fire. And FIRE is an acronym that stands for Financial Independence, Retire Early. And how that got to be so exciting for me was that about a dozen years ago, I found myself with what most would reasonably consider a very successful home inspection company, but bankrupt. Real bankrupt, not bankrupt like I don't have any money, bankrupt like in federal court. And that was due.
There's a difference.
Yeah, it was a real deal. It's a very humbling experience to be 50, whatever I was at the time, 55 or 57, and realizing I was at absolute zero. And that required a real change of mindset and a real change of heart. Simultaneous with working to regain a position of wealth, which thankfully I'm on a wonderful track there. I am financially independent at this point. I also got involved through IEB and some other channels in looking at lots of P&Ls and acquisition potential merger partners in the home inspection industry. And I discovered that I was not alone, that not necessarily others were bankrupt, but they had zero wealth, that everything that they perceived they had was in their home inspection business, and they had no escape from it. No matter what age they were going to become, they were going to work until they died in an attic. And between my personal journey and then observing that in many others, I went to Mark Hummel and said, I'd like to launch this thing, IEB on Fire, and just have candid conversations about personal finance and wealth building so that everyone could be able to recover if they were in a place like I was, where ideally start younger and end up by the time they're my age with significantly more zeros after their millions than my own.
That's impressive. That's super important too. Like starting young and working your way through it. Because at this point, you probably have to take bigger risks to gain those rewards at a later age in life. Is that correct?
No,
Okay.
No, I'm going to push back on that.
All right.
It's that kind of a myth that keeps people from getting there.
Huh.
It isn't about taking great risks. It isn't about being involved with incredible investments. It's about being disciplined in your lifestyle in spending. Savings rate is the single greatest predictor of future wealth. So if I earn $50,000 a year, and Matt, you're a hot shot and you earn $100,000 a year, and I save 20% of my $50,000, which is 10 grand a year, and you don't save any of your 100 grand, and even worse yet, use that $100,000 salary to accumulate debt, I, sir, will be accumulating wealth significantly faster while you're digging a hole, and I win in the end. It is not about being clever. It is not about great investments. It's about a fundamental discipline in spending and causing that delta, that difference, to be placed in an environment where it will grow slowly over time and make you a wealthy man.
That's interesting. So in this Zoom call, we have Robert on this show too. Robert, you had talked about your path and your journey. And I think Wally and Robert, the conversation you were having is like, if during that journey of a massive river of money flowing through your life, if you just had a little tributary to pull that off into a little pool and save it, would have changed both of your trajectories. Robert, what was your path? What did that look like for you?
Oh, absolutely. I think that I had some poor role models when I was younger, and I was involved in businesses that had tremendous revenue going through them. And if in hindsight, if I had just simply pulled off 1 or 2% of that revenue and just had it funneled away and put into a compound interest account or a Roth IRA or some other, and just left it, I'd be a multi-millionaire today. But I didn't. I kept,
burn, baby,
like,
burn. Spend it.
Yeah, spend it, live in a lifestyle where you spent a ton. And also, I didn't learn to, like when you play poker sometimes or gamble, you really should, if you're up, you should pull some aside and, pocket it. And
Right.
I never did that. It was always, I'm all in. The next job, I'm all in. And I definitely viewed money as this river that's never ending. As long as I was working, there was a never-ending money river coming down the road. And
That's true, Robert. There isn't an unending river of money, but sometimes you lose your piece of waterfront property and you can't get any more water, and that's what happened to you and it happened to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I have my brother on the
money kept flowing; it just didn't flow to us.
Yeah. So I have my brother on the call here too, because I invited him because he's taken a little bit different path in life. And he's now getting into the entrepreneurial journey himself. He's in a startup, but for a long time he worked kind of the traditional type job career thing. So Drew, talking about your journey and what that looks like for you.
Yeah, I think, I just had a typical 9-to-5 job, got an entry-level job at a Fortune 50 company and worked around and up and different departments and got promoted and into management and then eventually into an executive leadership role. But when you talk about what Robert was saying about taking 1 or 2% off of every check and putting it and pulling it aside, I've been doing that for over 20 years now, where every 2 weeks, again, I'm a W-2, always been a W-2 employee. I've always taken a percentage of every check off for 20 plus years and put it into a 401k or a just taxable brokerage account. So it's not.
That was a single digit percentage, wasn't it?
Yeah. I mean, for most years it was single digit, when I couldn't, I wasn't putting much more into that. I had other years where I ramped it up. One thing I did do, to Robert's point, is, at a big corporation, you get a raise every year, and that raise is normally 3 to 5%, whatever it is, nothing major, not enough to change your life. So I was disciplined that every year I got that raise, I bumped that percentage up by 1 or 2% and kept my lifestyle the same.
Wow.
And so towards the end, it was double digits that was going in. Until I started hitting maximums on what you can put into a 401k every year. But that's what caused me to start thinking about, okay, well, can I put it in a taxable brokerage? And so really just putting it aside and doubling on what Wally said, it wasn't hard to save money per se. It was discipline about not spending more and not letting my lifestyle increase at every single raise and every single promotion. Because I had big promotions along the way where your salary jumps by a good amount. And the temptation is like, buy a new car, get a nicer house, do all those things. And it's like, you either own your stuff or your stuff owns you. And I learned that early on. I made some dumb mistakes in that arena, but once you buy a new thing and you realize that 3 months later, you're not happy with that thing and that thing is not new anymore. It's old. You do enough of that. It's like, wait a minute, this is not smart, And so that's when I really started the FIRE concept that Wally's talking about. That's the thing that really started to get to me about 10 years ago, where I'm like, I want to retire at 50 and be done. And I'm on the path to do that.
Drew, you're my hero, man. And it's so great to have this diversity here in the conversation of age and in sources of income, because you spent 20 years just plodding along, forgive the term, plodding along, disciplined in your savings and investing, while in that same 20 years, many of us in the inspection world building businesses, and I'm going to guess many with a higher income. Yet they've got nothing to show for it because they lack that discipline, or maybe it was ignorance. Nobody told them, as Robert was saying, and maybe that's part of my problem too. But it's what the purpose of business is, to fund a perfect life. And a piece of that, to Robert's point, is diverting from that stream of income into what becomes passive income and wealth over time. And it's not important to own a business. It works for employees. It works for business owners. It works for everyone who works that system with patience.
Yeah, the lifestyle creep is a real thing. You make a little bit more money, right? And whether you're a
calling me
W-2,
names now? You're calling me a lifestyle creep?
You are a lifestyle creep. No, but like the creep of our lifestyle. Yeah. So there's okay. We'll leave that alone.
Podcast creep.
We have a podcast creep. That's right. Yeah. And so, but like our lifestyle wants to creep up to the level of our income, and we start making more money, whether it's through W-2 and you get promotions and raises, or whether you do a good deal in business and you're able to make a little more money. And I'm going to buy that car. I'm going to buy that house. I'm going to go on that trip. Why? Because I deserve it. Because I worked my butt off and I got this money and I earned it and I deserve it. And that's what I want. And then you're like, I get the new car and then I have the $1,000 payment on that truck. And then, yes. And then to Drew's point, 4 months later, you're driving down the road in your $1,000 a month payment truck. And you're like, my old thing got me to point A to point B the exact same way that this $1,000 truck payment gets me from point A to point B.
But here's the crazy thing, Matt. It's okay to want more things. It's even okay to purchase more things.
Yes.
But if you take an increase in income as an opportunity to increase debt, that is a death spiral. If you took that opportunity from an increase of income to save that money, what you can actually do is use the dividend paid from that money to make the payment on the toy. So that's what I've done with my boat. I've shared that with some of you before. So make believe you want a $100,000 car or a $100,000 boat. With discipline over time, save $100,000. Put it in a real estate investment fund. It's paying 10%. Go buy a car if you really want to have one on debt at 3%, even 4%, or whatever the percentage is, and you're living on the VIG. And when that debt is paid by your investment, you end up with a paid off car or a paid off boat, and you still have the investment. You win every time. Arbitrage.
Yeah. So Robert, you mentioned that like your lifestyle had kind of increased. How did that play out for you? Like, what are when you were increasing your lifestyle with the river flowing, like what was going through your head during that season? Was it just like, this is the way? I mean, or
ask him how many Rolls Royces he's owned in his life.
Let's start there. How many Rolls Royces have you owned?
Okay. So I used to wheel and deal a little bit. I'm still a wheeler dealer.
Story. Just give the number. How many Rolls Royces have you owned?
27.
27
Rolls Royces. That's
not
lifestyle
all at
creep.
once.
That's lifestyle creep right there. I don't care who.
That's a creep driving a Rolls Royce.
Yeah, you're a Rolls Royce creep right there.
I tell you what, I had. So I mean, this is how bad I was. I said I'm not trying to blame anyone. It was me, but the people I hung around with were very much. Where's your Rolex watch and where's the Mercedes or whatever? And I'm a winner, so you got a Mercedes, I got a Rolls Royce.
So I have this vision that Robert's driving around in his Rolls Royce in an empty wallet. My man Drew's driving around in like a 12-year-old Saturn with no paint and a trunk full of money.
It was a Mazda, Wally. You're way off. It was a Mazda.
A Mazda, way off.
It was a Mazda, and it was a Mazda. It was a little beat up. No, but for real, no, it was a Scion before that too.
It was a Scion,
little Scion, little toaster car. Yeah. I had nice cars and no money, and my brother had crappy cars and a lot of money. So yeah, right. No payment, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely, man. Yeah.
So, for me, it was a lifestyle that I kind of got hooked into, and hanging out with those people. And I don't think I was a nice person back then.
Wow.
A lot of stress, a lot of, borrowing from Peter to pay Paul, a lot of.
We get cranky when we're broke.
Right?
Yeah.
Until it just totally imploded. and being homeless is not fun. And I exaggerate a little bit. I never actually like slept under a bridge or anything, but going from a big 5-bedroom house down to a rented place that was in a not a nice neighborhood, and going from a gated community to, it was a really eye-opening experience.
Yeah, I can
Shocking.
imagine. Yeah. And you had mentioned before, I don't think you've mentioned since we started recording, but you mentioned how you built up this empire of real estate that on paper was worth, the number on the paper was millions of dollars, but, and then where did you end up at the end of when everything settled out?
Yeah, $900 and a used Ford pickup truck that had done 190,000 miles, and homeless. And that
Didn't
was,
know where you're going to live.
right, boom.
Yeah.
And,
Wow.
this was back in the day when they were still foreclosing on houses. And so, 2000, it was very popular to go bankrupt in 2008, 9,
Very popular. Yeah.
so I
So
signed
so
right
what about the
on.
people you were hanging around with, right? Like the people you hang out with matter. And so they're flexing with their Mercedes, you're flexing with your, your cars, and everybody's got the watches and the stuff. Where did they go through a similar experience?
Um, I think some of them did, because I knew many contractors and people involved in the real estate industry and stuff like that, and mortgage brokers. I knew quite a few attorneys that probably came out of it very well because they just switched into bankruptcies and rode that market for a while.
I see.
So
Yeah.
But yeah, when you don't have money, when you can't, it's surprising how many people are not friends with you anymore.
Wow.
Yep.
I'll be your friend, Robert.
Wow. Yeah. That's a
I'll
real
be your
interesting
friend.
lesson. I mean, they're basically hanging around you and using you.
So,
Yeah,
so
well,
I listen to a lot of people, especially since
yeah.
we started the IEB on fire, and I get people calling me one-on-one with all kinds of stories of how challenging they find their things. And the thing I hear from most often from people is, "But Wally, you don't understand." And anything that begins with "but you don't understand," it just makes my skin crawl. But anyway, there's no way I can cut expenses. And I did a poll at a conversation I had with a group of people on financial independence. What was the high? What is your cable bill? And we've got people that we all know, love, and trust and care about with cable bills that are over $200 a month. The highest one I've heard so far is over $300 freaking dollars a month. Well, cut that baby.
Yeah.
Cut that baby. I haven't had cable in almost 20 years. Comical thing, Tony and I are moving, and free cable comes with the condo. I swear that's why we're moving. But find places to cut money. We can all cut.
Yeah.
One of the classic wastes of money is freaking Starbucks. Man,
Yeah.
what a waste of money. Go pay $9 for some drink that's going to make you gain 10 pounds and look like a slob. Nobody's going to want to be with you anyway. But there's always places to save money. Conservatively, there's none of us that can't find 20% in our budget. And if 20 sounds too big, start with 1 or start with 2. To Drew's point, earlier, he started small, and then each time a little more money came along, that went toward the savings and investment rate, not toward double mocha lattes and all that crap.
So Drew, how strict is your budget? Like when Wally says that and people listen to your story and they're like, oh, well, do you have no fun at all in life?
No, I have a lot of fun.
Do you drink Starbucks?
No, I actually don't. I make my coffee at home every morning. So
yeah, so do I, brother.
Yeah, you got to choose what you value. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You have to choose your value, and you have to define success for yourself. And I think when Robert was talking about the people he was hanging out with, I've been there before, and it's not that people are using you per se, but you can't afford to hang out with people because their idea of going out on a Friday night is, hundreds of dollars. Just default, and I think when you're going to be around people who are spending a lot of money, you're going to spend a lot of money there. So we have a lot of fun. My family and I, we take awesome vacations every year. Like we're at Dominican Republic for a week last year. We bought a boat a couple of years ago. Same thing. There's not a payment on that boat though. And so, but that to me is like, it's an investment in like family time. I've got 2 young kids and we spend a lot of time out there, and same thing. I could sell it tomorrow and get the cash back if I wanted to, so we have a lot of fun. But I don't spend money on things to keep up with people. And I think it's important to understand when you're keeping up with the Joneses, and when are you buying stuff with money that you don't have to impress people that you don't even like, and I think that's where we get caught up on. And, if you win the rat race of life, you're still a rat. So be careful who you compete with.
Our dad used to say that all the time. You're still a rat.
Drew, what are some examples of ways that you reduce spending? I shared with you, one of my things, I'll give you another one before you get to yours, just to get the flow going of places we can save money, is reduce expenses so we can save and or invest that money. I have an app on my phone from my auto insurance company that tracks my driving habits. And as long as I continue to score a 90 or above, I get a 30% discount on my insurance. So if somebody calls me and I'm driving, I'm not answering because I'm making money while I'm ignoring you.
I would not save money on that app. they tried to get me to
they would
that
raise
app.
your price.
They tried to get me to get the app, but I was like, no, they put that tracker in my car. I just stopped using it. I'm like, nah, forget the discount.
I'll give you another thing I'm doing to save money. I've given you 2 so far. There's nothing I do to save money, so Tanya and I can invest that money. I don't wear underwear. It's expensive. Nobody can see it. Who's impressed if you wear expensive underwear? You can't see it.
Oh, Wally, that's just TMI, really.
My biggest one probably is on the money saving is eating out, I think that's a big thing. We do eat out. It's not like we're, but it's one of those things where, again, I got a family of 4. It's $100 a pop to go anywhere. And so for us, my wife and I both cook. We cook a lot. And so that's something we lean into. It's like the convenience of going somewhere out to eat. We do eat out, but we're pretty disciplined about it. And, that's something where I see a lot of people spend a lot of money. The person who's saying I can't get 20% back, go just add up how much you spent at restaurants over the last month. And then ask yourself, was it really that good? Because most of the time, what we make at home is better anyway. But that's a simple one that a lot of people just assume that you have to eat out 3 times a week. It's like, no, you don't.
No, you don't. That's right.
Yeah, I mean, I think the same goes for restaurants, food and alcohol. I mean, half the time you're drinking the alcohol just to tolerate the people you're sitting there eating with. And
Robert, we're going to be together in just a few weeks at Unite. And if you walk up to me holding a drink, I'm going to just be like, yeah.
He's going to ask you if you're wearing underwear.
I'm going to ask him if you're wearing underwear. And we've started to examine some of that stuff. My partner and I, Teresa, have started to just really look at some of those things. It's like the other day we have a boat, and we normally meet this particular group of people at a restaurant, and it normally ends up being like you said, for the 2 of us, $150, $170 at this restaurant, and wine and all this other stuff. And it's crazy. So we said, hey, you know what? Look, grab Subway. We're going to go on the boat, and we're just going to take it out in the river and watch the sunset. We all ate Subway sandwiches. We had a great time. And actually, there was 0 alcohol on board. It was an awesome time.
Well, because you didn't need it to tolerate the company of your significant other. Right.
She needed it.
I don't need alcohol to tolerate her company.
That's good. That's really good. Yeah. So I would say this to anybody who's listening, that, take the time, just literally pull up your bank statements and take a pad of paper. This is what I do. And I literally create categories, and I write down every single expense and so if I'm going through, okay, that's a restaurant, I put it under my restaurant category. If that's a utility, I put it under my utility category. And I literally write it out on a legal pad and write everything out I spent in the last 30 days. That gives me my mortgage, that gives me my utilities, and that gives me heating and cooling, electricity, gas, all that stuff. Your cable bills, your security system, your everything else that you're paying for on your house. Literally write it down on your pad of paper, and then start to look and be like, when you add it up, it's like, well, yeah, I go out to eat occasionally. But when you add it up and you're like, whoa, I spent $1,800 at restaurants last month.
Yeah.
and I'm not saving properly for my future. Well, how much do you want to save? And it's like, man, I can cut $500 a month of going out, $300 a month of going out. And you just start there and you start finding ways. There's so many places to cut. You got a cable bill. Like, what do you want? Do you want to work till the day you die, or do you want to watch some TV show? Like,
I do want to work till the day I die, but I
do
want
too.
to
I don't have to, though.
Choice. That's
by choice, right? I want to have impact, right? And yeah, man. So I think that's so good. You got to cut out all the fluff that's stealing your future. Yeah. You're trading tomorrow. You're buying today's pleasure with tomorrow's money and tomorrow's freedom and tomorrow's future. Every time.
Most Americans die sick, broke, and alone. And those are eminently controllable in that you can do things to hold the health demons at bay. You can minimize the health problems. You can minimize the wealth problems or create wealth. And by the way, if you do those two things reasonably well, much to Drew's point and also Robert's point of who you spend time with, you can die a long time from now quite happy and quite comfortable.
Very true.
I think that if you plan make some plans, look at where the money's going, track it, and then when you start to live wisely and don't have a car payment anymore, or like some of us don't have a mortgage payment, then suddenly you can put so much more money into that savings account and start compounding on that. And it adds up. It's unfortunately one of the things they don't teach kids in school, and that's, I think, is terrible. We were talking not too long ago with a younger person, and gave her, was it Dave Ramsey's book of financial management or financial universities? Yeah. And she came back to us, I really love the book, blah, blah, blah. She said, where do I get one of those compounding interest accounts? Like, where do I get it? And I'm like, well, they're all compounding if you leave it in there. Yeah. And it was because she'd never heard the term before. She thought it was like a Roth IRA or some secret that only rich people are aware of this thing.
Wow.
And
CIT Bank. CIT Bank is my bank of choice to dump cash. And it's paying 4.75, about 4.5. And there's no strings, if you know what I mean. You can take the money when you want, you can do whatever you want. So we use that CIT Bank account as a place just to collect money. It just drips in there. And then when we get to a particular amount, then we'll put it in a brokerage account or put it in a real estate investment fund or do whatever we're doing with it. But it's growing while it's sitting.
So what are some accounts that you guys, so you just mentioned a couple of accounts, Wally, like, so for someone who's getting started, right, to Robert's point, he's talking to a young person who's like, what are these things? And you threw a couple words off the top of your head, but what do you guys currently, when you have money and you start saving it up, right? Like you maybe it's $200 a month or $300 a month or whatever it is that you can scrape together. Maybe you're able to put together more. At what point do you say, I'm going to scrape off some of this money and put it into yet a different account? What are those levels that maybe you would use? And what kind of accounts are you putting money into and why?
So I'll share my priorities, and Drew's may be similar or Robert's may be similar or different. Number one, if you're in a scenario where there's a 401k available, you absolutely want to contribute to your 401k up to the match.
With the company's matching, that's free money.
That's right. That's doubling of your money instantly.
Yep.
So number one, up to that limit. After that, these are my opinions, your results may vary, is to begin putting money into your own 401k. And these are buckets as opposed to investments. What goes in that bucket is an individual choice. I'm a fan of no-cost, low-cost index funds. I think Drew has a similar thing. I use Vanguard. I think Drew uses Fidelity. The reason you want to put it into your IRA rather than continue into the 401k is you have total control over that money outside of anything that the employer's doing. And then go back to that position. To accumulate cash, my preference, and then I'll stop talking, I'd love to hear others, is to put it in a high yield savings account. It's been decades since there were savings accounts that yielded anything. And it's easy to get somewhere between 4 and 5% right now. And those are my three key things is the 401k at or above the match. I'll tell you what's very interesting, especially for the smaller home inspection companies where it may just be you and your spouse. If you're the only two people in your 401k, you can match up to 25%. That's mind-boggling.
Yeah.
So for the people who have smaller companies saying, I can't do that, I'm a small company, I'm this, you can match up to 25% in your own 401k. It's nuts what can happen. We can't solve all that here, but just the idea of what's possible for very small companies, and even the biggest companies in IEB are still small companies in the grand scheme of things.
Right.
What's your priority, Drew?
It'd be very similar to what you're doing. If you have a 401k available and put in at least to the match, that money goes in pre-tax. It depends on if it's Roth or not. But yeah, it can invest at least to the match in your 401k. It's free money for your employer. From there, there's different philosophies. You have the Dave Ramsey approach, or different people out there that, hey, have 3 to 6 months of emergency cash reserves, so that if you lose your job or lose your source of income, that you're okay for 6 months. You don't have to start selling off assets to pay your bills. So I would tell anybody, get 6 months of cash in the bank, and you would not believe the amount of peace that will bring to you. That sounds like a very Dave Ramsey quote, but
it does, though. It brings a lot of peace.
Most people are one flat tire away from a major problem. Their dishwasher breaking down, and just stuff in life happens. $1,000 bills come up out of nowhere. And so, having that peace of mind will alleviate a lot of stress. And if you're married, that will alleviate stress in your marriage, because you're not freaking out and stressed out over $10 somewhere. Right. And so getting that 6 months saved up. From an investment standpoint, I put money into low or no cost index funds after that. So I have a retirement account, which is 401k, so I can't touch that until I'm at least 59 and a half years old. But I also have another investment account that I'm just putting money into, and buying basically S&P 500 index funds is like what I would tell someone to do, is the bread and butter of your investment account. That's the main thing. That will, over the last 100 years, returns around, I don't know, the number is 7 to 10% annualized returns in that. And if you can figure out, once you start to see compound interest happening, you will find that more fun than a new car. Because I think it's Albert Einstein, right? It's like compound interest is the eighth wonder of the world. Those who understand receive it, and those who don't pay it. And so I think when you start to see a, to Wally's point, $100,000 that made you 10% while you did nothing, gave you 10 grand and paid for your boat or whatever the thing is, like, that's the thing that gets really cool, is that number getting bigger and bigger while you do nothing. I think in 2019, 2020, or 2018, 19, and 20, we had some pretty significant gains. Well, even in 21 and 22, the market was up coming out of some of the COVID craziness. But I watched, huge numbers, 20% return on your investment, so you have.
And if you have $1 million in there,
$200,000 for doing nothing, just for sitting and holding, and you got to stomach it on the way back down, but it will go up over time.
You didn't need to wear a mask. You get that money. You didn't even need to wear a mask, and you still make money.
Yeah, that's right.
But I think it's like, I've had years where my investment returns were actually bigger than my income. So Beautiful. I made more money on my investments than I did working. And once that happens one time, that was a really great year. That to me was an eye opener. Like, wait a minute, I can just keep shoveling money into this sucker. And you do the math on what that number turns into at $1 million, $2 million, $3 million. There's a lot of money rolling in. So I deviated off your question, but 401k to start. And from an investment standpoint, I'm a big fan of no low cost index funds. I'm not a real estate guy. There's a lot of money made there. I'm not an expert there. I know what I do and it works. And if I keep doing it, I probably won't be working at 50 years old.
J.L. Collins, man, Simple Path to Wealth.
Yep. Yeah.
Hey, I got to give a plug.
I wrote that down. Simple Path to Wealth. I was like, just a minute ago, you're saying something. I'm like, this guy's right, J.L. Collins.
So that's right. On the IEB on Fire, that's a monthly call we do on the third Thursday. The next one is whatever the third Thursday is, the 16th. That we're talking about J.L. Collins' Simple Path to Wealth. Every month, we kind of highlight a different foundational wealth building book. No magic stuff, no stupid stuff like, oh, let's do crypto arbitrage. We're not doing any of that crap. Just talking about the fundamentals that have never failed an individual. And Drew, you're laughing at me, buddy, but J.L. Collins, you can begin at any point in the last 100 years that you choose to say, oh, let's look at that next 20, 30 years. Every single path, there's not a single date in the last 100 years that J.L. Collins' Simple Path to Wealth has not turned out that a person ended up wealthy.
Wow. And it's not hard. To your point, like the person who says, I can't find 20% to save. Yes, you can. Person, well, that sounds complicated to invest. No, this is very simple. Open a Vanguard or Fidelity account, find S&P or total market index fund, and just start putting money in. You don't have to do a lot of research. You don't have to be smart to do this.
And beware the financial advisor. You want to go broke quick, get a financial advisor. Bad juju. Cost you 1 or 2% of your money to have the advice. Then they'll put you in a loaded investment for another 2 or 3%. And while Drew's trucking along over time at 8 to 10%, you're trucking along at 4%. And Drew won with no advice.
Wow.
I do not pay for finance.
Robert, what are you doing?
So I have a financial advisor.
Why don't you send me and Drew that money? We'll split it.
I tell you, I'm really happy with my financial advisor, but I think for different people, there's different avenues. So, if I was talking to a young person just starting out, I'd be like, hey, first of all, read Dave Ramsey's book. And then I would also say there's a really good book called The Psychology of Money.
Oh, I love it.
2 great books that give you the basics and change your habit of Starbucks and have 7-Eleven coffee, and put $1.50 away a day, $30 a month, something, build the buckets, that's the way to go. I think that then you can start talking when someone's got $500,000 or $1 million or whatever they've built up to, you can then start looking at other, I can maybe take a bit more risk with this 50 grand.
Right.
There's an S&P financial note out there right now based on the S&P. It's paying 11.5% interest. Now there's some downside. If the S&P drops 30%, well, you're going to lose your 50 grand.
Right.
But if 50 grand is all you have in the world, that's not a gamble worth taking. But if 50 grand is part of your $5 million portfolio, well, maybe it's worth taking.
Great point.
So Wally and Robert, I know you guys were heavily invested in real estate when the 2008 crash happened, and that was part of the triggering of the downfall. You were highly leveraged in real estate. Do you guys currently invest in real estate today?
So the answer is yes, in a strange way. I own 3 homes free and clear and just sold our office building. And I've taken that money and put it into real estate investment funds and mortgages. So in rounding, I get 10% on the money with no active participation, minimal risk. And for those that care about these things, I also, you end up as an equity holder and it works toward 15 to 20% over time. And you get a K1 for your tax return. So that's yes in real estate, but in a different way.
Like you're not buying single family homes and renting them out or personally owning.
I've done that.
Right. I know you did that in the past.
Yeah. But at this point in my career, it's easier just to receive mailbox money than and let somebody else chase it. And I'll just get paid.
Yeah. How about you, Robert?
No, just our house. Have no real estate particular holdings. Again, I've never had good luck being a landlord, and no interest. Okay. I know people make money doing it,
They
it's
do.
work.
I know
There's
people
work
that
involved.
do well. Yeah,
Right.
yeah. I'm not in the real estate world. I mean, I own an inspection company, but I don't own any real estate as an investment like that. I'm just not comfortable with that. I own several businesses, and I have money invested in, in index funds and whatnot, and so I kind of keep it simple that way. I do what I know, and and the real estate world, I don't know it well enough, and I don't know. I've seen enough ups and downs in it. It kind of scares me. I like the consistency over the long-term haul. And like what my brother's doing, like now what you guys are doing as well. I like what that path is. So if we're getting close to the end here, and so maybe we can go around the room and do this. Wally, if you have one piece of advice, what is it? If you're going to give one piece of advice to someone looking to make a difference and go in the FIRE path, the financial independence, and retire early, what's the one thing if you had to pick one thing?
Spend less than you earn.
Spend less than you earn. That's awesome. Drew, how about you? Do you have maybe one thing that you would add to the conversation?
I would just say it's going to take a lot of work either way. There's no get rich quick thing without a lot of work and discipline. And I think whatever your hand finds to do it with all of your strength. Work super hard wherever you're at. Be awesome at it. And supply and demand always catch up with each other. So be a type of person who's in low supply. And hard workers with great attitudes are in very low supply. Demand always catches up. Value catches up. They always get paid.
All right. And Robert, how about you?
Yeah, well, kind of a mixture of both. I mean, I think Drew's right on the money. Work hard. Be an asset to the company, whether you're self-employed or working for a company. Be an asset. And Wally's right on the money as well. You gotta spend less. And then start saving, and start now. There's no better time today. Today you start, and
there we go.
That's the whole thing. Yeah,
man. So I hope that we're able to help some people today. I think that all this advice, you've really helped me. I like it. I've learned something new today. It's always inspiring to hang out with good people who are making active steps to financial independence and retiring early. I love it. All right, guys. Well, if you guys want to reach out, we'll have in the show notes, we'll have some contact information if you want to reach out to Wally, Drew, or Robert. But until next time, we'll see you later.
You've been listening to Empire State of Mind for the home inspection industry and beyond. Our passion is to elevate the home inspection industry with mindset, strategy, and tools. We hope you've enjoyed the show. Make sure to like, rate, and review. For more, follow on Instagram at IEB Coaching. And don't forget to hit the website at www.iebcoaching.com. Learn about IEB at no cost and have all your questions answered on our open call once a month on the third week of the month. We hope to see you there, and we'll see you next time on the Empire State of Mind.